Great Britain had a good morning in the water. Stockport's Kerry-Anne Payne and training partner Cassie Patton took silver and bronze respectively. That was in the 10k marathon swim. And Bryony Shaw won bronze in the RSX women's windsurfing. The big event in Beijing today is the men's 200-metre final. Jamaica's Usain Bolt, who of course cruised to victory in the 100 metres last week, is the favourite. That gets underway at 3:20 this afternoon.
BBC Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Diane Oxbury.
I think there's room for some optimism in this day that things will slowly get better, but there'll always be an awful lot of cloud cover. Every now and then there could be a shower here and there, and I suppose one or two of those could be fairly heavy. But as you get into the afternoon, fingers crossed the cloud could start to thin and break a bit. Glimpse of brightness every now and then. Top temperatures still poor, 19 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. You can also text on 07786206951, and you can email at radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. That Leo Abs, well, it's Gay Pride this weekend, isn't it? Although, frankly, I've not yet worked out what there is to be proud of. You know, I mean, what is it to be proud of? I'm not proud of having ginger hair or being 5'8", or a bit gobby. I'm not proud of any of my genetics, really. You just get them, don't you? They're issued. So what is there to be proud about? Anyway, it all began back in... Well, it didn't. They've been at it for years. But it all began in 1967 when Leo Abs, MP, charted through Parliament a private members' bill. It was a private members' bill that had already had the nod from the various people. The reason no party took it up was because in those days, if you were in favour of legalising homosexual acts between men, then you were in for a dig. You were up for the high jump. So Leo Abs, a great campaigner of human rights of all kinds, charted its course through the Commons, and it became legal, or should I say it ceased to be illegal, for men to have sex with each other. There were all sorts of rules and regulations appertaining thereto, but that was the gist of it. My question today is, should we be celebrating his life? He's died overnight. Should we be celebrating his life, or should we be dancing on his grave? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Has all the liberalisation of our sex laws made society a better place or a worse place? I'd be interested to know. 0161 228 2255 if you want to comment on that and you want to join us on that, you're more than welcome. And then also, well, first of all, the story in the news about the two girls who were described as traumatised by a flasher. Why? I'm not suggesting that they should enjoy the experience, and I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't try to catch the bloke and give him a stern talking to. But frankly, why were they traumatised? It's just a willy. Exactly. I've seen loads, and I don't just mean at the gym. I've told the story before of the bloke who used to lurk in Orford Park bogs, and he used to give you the tanner to touch it. Yeah. Apparently he gave you more if you moved your hand about. I never got involved in that. But, well, I didn't. I didn't really like Mars bars that much. But you could. He would give you a tanner if you touched it. No, I'm not suggesting that we give him the MBE. But no harm was done, frankly. No harm at all. Now, he might... It's perfectly possible, individuals do. He might have gone on to be a mass murderer and a rapist, but there again, he could have gone on to be a chief constable. I don't know. And I certainly don't think one is what we want to call... He certainly could have gone on to be a Catholic priest. In fact, he might have been one already. Almost compulsory. So, I mean, that's the question. What does it matter if a bloke jumps out of his motor car, opens his coat, and there it is, meat and two veg for all to see? I can't, frankly, see what he gets out of it, but I don't see why anyone should be traumatised. Yes, call the coppers. Yes, if you're about, say, oi, get your coat fastened, you dirty bugger. But more than that, and as for traumatised, I suspect they were more traumatised by the reaction of their parents. How say you?
This Saturday from 1, BBC Radio Manchester takes to the streets for the fantastic Manchester Pride Parade.
Anthony Crabb.
I'll take you to the heart of the biggest carnival in Manchester as over 70 outrageous floats make their way through the streets alongside hundreds of fabulous marchers. Thousands of spectators turn out in the rainbow of colour and cacophony of sound that is the Pride Parade. And you can join them on BBC Radio Manchester DAB Digital Radio.
Celebrating 18 years of Manchester Pride from 1 o'clock on Saturday at BBC Radio Manchester DAB Digital Radio.
You see, why is that? I can't get that. Why do they call it the Pride Parade? Why not call it the Fairy Festival? It doesn't matter. It's about as much value. The whole thing's balmy.
Allan Beswick, BBC Radio Manchester.
Stuart in Newell Green. How are you doing, Stuart?
I'm fine, Alan.
Good.
I'm a proud Mancunian. I'm born
Really?
a proud Mancunian and I'll die a proud Mancunian.
Oh, very bizarre.
No,
Well,
it's not bizarre. It's humanity. And Leo Absey helped people like me to walk in full human dignity.
Well, hang on a minute.
And it's not
There's two things. Well, I stand corrected, but it is 40 years ago, so his name's never entered my mind since then. But notwithstanding the pronunciation of his name, the two things there. The first one, let's deal with that. Why are you a proud Mancunian?
I was born a proud Mancunian.
Well, no, you were-
I'm a get-out gay Mancunian. If that
Well, I'll come to the second bit in a minute, but the first bit, what is there to be proud about being a Mancunian? You had no control over it. You were born here. It was nothing to do with
I'm
you.
proud of my city as well. I'm a proud Mancunian in many ways.
How
I'm
very
proud.
bizarre.
I'm proud that Manchester City Council, for one, supports homosexual parades like we're going to have on Saturday,
Well,
and the whole
again-
thing about being gay. Manchester is the city of tolerance. Mrs. Robinson, the former president of ERA, announced to the world that Manchester. There's something to be proud of. The city of tolerance.
You see, I don't grasp that. My difficulty isn't that the city is a smashing place and that the city fathers over the years...
Well, you wouldn't because you come from a village.
Well, I may well come from a village, but you see, I'm sure that was meant to be either humorous or offensive, but it doesn't affect me. I was born in...
Defend you.
It would be hard. I was born in Warrington merely by dint of the fact that my mum happened to be there at the time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I think Warrington make me feel good about, or I feel good about things in Warrington. I feel good about things in Manchester. I probably feel good about more things in Manchester than I do about Warrington, primarily because Manchester's a much bigger place and more things have happened. But proud's a strange word. I'm proud of occasionally, although it is a sin, I'm proud occasionally of certain things I might have
Well, I
done.
don't know what sin is. I'm an atheist.
Well, you know what I mean. Pride is one of those
Thank
things
God
that
for
we
the
all...
atheist.
Thank God for the atheist, yeah. Pride is one of those things we ought to avoid as best we can. But yes, you do sometimes think, oh, I did that. I mean, I'm proud of the fact, and I shouldn't be, I'm proud of the fact that I happen to be the person that they asked to break the tarmac, which began the construction of the Metrolink. I'm proud of that. I've no right to be, because I just happened to be in this chair, and they needed a person who was in this chair, and it was me at the time. I had no control in it whatsoever, but I'm proud of the fact that I did it, those sorts of things.
A couple of other things.
But I don't understand why anyone would be proud of a city.
I am proud. I can't explain it, but I am proud of my city.
Okay.
This is the centre of the universe.
Let's come to... Well, I'll agree with you on the second bit. Let's come to Leo Absey, as you correctly pronounce it. Leo Absey. I mean, you will say that he did a great thing for our society, I presume.
Yes, I would. I think we should celebrate his life.
Why?
Because people like me can now walk almost in full human dignity and be proud and just accept that people, hopefully, most people now accept that gaiety, or homosexuality, right?
Go on, you're all right, don't worry.
Gay.
Don't worry, go on. Lots of people do, lots of people don't. In the end, we all know what it means these days, so let's not get bogged down by the semantics.
Now, the other thing I've got to take issue with is the wrinkly bit.
Go on.
I am officially a wrinkly. I'm in my 61st year.
It's all downhill for you, isn't it, pal?
And I've got my bus pass.
Oh, dear
I've got
God.
my bus. Wait for it. Next month, I get my heating allowance at the higher rate for one.
Oh, fantastic.
And you've got it coming, matey.
Yeah, I have. You see, that's one thing I won't be proud of. Not the bus pass is neither here nor there. I'll get that because it's a laugh. But the other thing, the heating allowance, I find it reprehensible that the government will send me a cheque for a fair-sized chunk. No, you can sod off. But it will almost certainly go to a charity, and you're not one.
I'm just going to phone one.
You still won't get it. But the government will send me a cheque of some considerable value when, frankly, if I'm still working, I won't need it.
I've just devised a new charity.
Go on.
The Church of Gay Atheists.
The Church of Gay Atheists.
So, yes.
I wish you luck with that. You should worship at the altar of Leo Absey, no doubt.
He will. He might sit at my right hand one day.
Steady now.
Alan.
Go on.
You're talking about flashers.
Yes.
Manchester gave the fabric for Dirty Macintosh. It's part of the Dunlop complex on Cambridge Street.
It was, yes. I mean, on that subject, and it's rather more serious than the first two, I still don't grasp why two young girls should be traumatised, was the word, by a flasher. I don't get that.
But anybody who hurts a child hurts me. One of my partners asked me about children, and I said, anybody who hurts a child hurts me. I've got nephews and nieces I die for, but I'd rather live
I
for.
grasp that. But again, I don't... I still don't grasp the traumatise element of it.
So there's an industry in counselling and so on and so forth.
Ah, right.
I think that's what it's about.
Right.
Yeah. Just tell him he's a dirty old man and that's it. Get it open and done
Well,
with.
he may not be that old, but certainly, he needs to be discovered, he needs to be found, he needs to be talked to. I don't know whether he needs more than that. We shall see. All right, Stuart, stay
Alan.
proud. Have a good day.
Cheers, bye.
Cheers. Stuart Newell Green is proud of Manchester, proud of being gay, and proud of all sorts of things, and atheists, so there you go. What do you say? What is there to be proud of? 0161 228 2255. And are we proud that winner of the gold in the running, that young lass, Ohurugo, is that how you pronounce it? My apologies if it's not. I've already been corrected on Absey, so maybe I'll be corrected on that. Ohurugo. But she's being lauded as a great success. But this is the woman who was given a lifetime ban for missing 3 consecutive drug tests. Her excuse was that she'd moved house and forgot to tell them. Well, it doesn't cut much ice with me. I make no allegations, I merely say 3 consecutive drug tests. That's what she failed. Is that rather more a over-polished brass medal? Or is it indeed a gold medal? You tell me. Are you chuffed that the woman won? Or really, should it be, actually, she got a lifetime ban, that should have stood, and frankly, she shouldn't have been representing us? You tell me. 0161 228 2255. It's the Olympic Games, it's just a bit of stuff, it's just a bit of toy-towning, but have they changed? Are the Olympic Games now very, very tarnished? Certainly, I mean, they did the same thing, only they've got no evidence. We got evidence about this woman. The evidence is she missed 3 consecutive drug tests, which is a lifetime ban. Now, she overturned that ban at appeal, but the ban stood and there was no suggestion that she hadn't missed 3 consecutive drug tests. Now, I'm not about to convict somebody on the allegation, but frankly, the rules are you miss 3. Now, if it's your living, it's not a hobby for these people, if it's your living, then you ought to know the rules and you ought to either disobey them in a better way or obey the damn things. It's like that lad from Jamaica when he won the run in there. Was it the 100 metres when he run that? And everyone went, hello, he won that by a lot. He's on the snort, isn't he? Hello. That's all. That's what the papers are saying, not me. I don't care. But that's what they're saying. Oughtn't we now to be casting our eye over this lady who's won for a gold for Britain, having previously been banned from the Olympics for life? Is it tarnished? You tell me. 12 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Mark Edwards.
The Home Secretary's announced plans to further restrict the movements of paedophiles, including banning them from foreign travel. Manchester Airport's admitted it's interested in buying one of BAA's airports, which could be about to come onto the market after the Competition Commission said it would like to see more competition amongst airports. And Washington signed an agreement with Warsaw, which will see US missile interceptors built on Polish soil, and it's angered Moscow. Manchester's weather, cloudy, showers and a top temperature of 19 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Let's take a look firstly to the M6. And traffic for the moment moving fairly well between junction 23 at Haydock all the way up towards junction 26 at Torrell. Now to Earlham, the A57 Liverpool Road's queuing up at the moment because of a broken down car. We're still awaiting confirmation from the police, but if you're heading westbound around Barton Road, then do take it carefully. Thanks to Maria for your updates. Don't forget though, if you can update me further, call in on the travel line 0161244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
01612282255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk and the text number 07786 206 951. Paul in Hale. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Alan. I agree with you entirely that people like you and me don't need the winter fuel allowance. The problem is that all the evidence for all these types of benefits is if you make people fill out lots of complicated forms and you means test them, lots of people don't get them. Now, I think the solution would be for you and I to put that fuel allowance on our tax return and at least pay tax on it. That would solve both problems to me. It wouldn't quite remove it, but at least it would help.
It would help. It wouldn't solve it in that you or I, if we did put it on our tax form, would keep whatever percentage is left after the taxman's bin, depending on whether you're on 20%, 25 or... I think
40.
40, right. So,
Yeah.
so you would still have a benefit from it when it's not necessary.
Yes, you would, but I think that is a small price to pay for making sure that lots of people get it who wouldn't otherwise fill out the forms or apply for it or do all the other things that we know happen with all the other benefits that a lot of old age pensioners and poorer people are not getting to. The government's own statistics say that there are millions of people who are not getting the benefits that they're entitled to.
But of course there is another way that you seem to have passed by. I appreciate that if we have to rely on the two-faced, lying, drivelling idiots and PR tosspots that are politicians at the moment...
Don't mince your words, Alan.
I'm thinking about whether I should come off the fence, but instead of saying, right, you stupid old wrinklies, you poor cretinous old wrinklies, what we should do with you, because you haven't got the wit to save money from your pension, what we're going to do is going to give you a lump sum every year because you're thick and you're stupid and you're all Alzheimer's-ridden, wrinkly gets that should have died years ago. Instead of saying that, if we said, hello, grown-ups, how are you? Here are the benefits to which you are entitled. We will pay them once every month or week. We call it the retirement pension. And, should you need to, you'll be able to live on it. That would solve it. Now, the likes of you and me, when we reach our 65, if we're still getting a bob or two from a job, we will pay tax on that. Those who've been fortunate enough to work or indeed save enough to have a decent pension will be taxed on it. But then there will be not one person over retirement age who is scratching round under the sofa for half pennies in order to pay their electric bill because the snivelling dogs of a government haven't given them enough to live on.
But isn't that, aren't you saying exactly what I said about the winter
No,
fuel
I'm not.
allowance?
Yes and no simultaneously, which is my great talent. It's the only one I have. Yes, I agree that we should pay money and worry about the cost of that when we're collecting taxes, but also if people receive money that they do not need, we get that money back in tax or a proportion of it. But I'm not saying do it on the basis of here's a nice little publicity vote-grabbing lump of money once a year, 200 quid, which frankly wouldn't pay for a meal for the people paying it out, the politicians. What we should be doing is making the retirement
They wouldn't need to pay for the meal because they put that on their expense account.
Well, there is that as well, yeah, but I think they sometimes have to pay in advance, which must startle them. But no, I know, yeah, it's a cruel, cruel world that they have to struggle in, and only 100,000 a year to go at, the poor buggers. But in the meantime, I think the retirement pension should be so much that you would not need somebody else to save up for you. You would not need politicians to get their rocks off and garner votes by giving you little pats on the head of handouts. I think the retirement pension in this country is an utter disgrace, and every politician that has been to Parliament for the past 50 years should hang his and her head in shame. And that includes friends of mine. They should hang their heads in shame.
I think you're probably right in principle, but I think the reality is that isn't going to happen because the costs on the exchequer are going to be far too big in the short, medium, or maybe even the long term. My solution at least would claw back some of the money that's being given out to people like you and me who don't need it on the winter fuel allowance. And the government could do that in an instant. They could simply say it's a taxable benefit.
They could indeed, and that would deal with that one simple thing. So you're absolutely right on that. We agree on that. I just think we should take the opportunity to tell these fools that we sent, these greedy fools that we send to the big house, that we actually want them to do something dramatic.
I think they probably heard you.
I don't think they did. I've been saying it for years, and they've been fanning around with bits and bobs for decades. Have a good day, Paul, but I think you're right. That would be a way forward. Thanks. Have a good day, mate. 0161 228 2255. Can I just say, I actually like politicians. I believe that politicians go into the business for the best of motives. There are some snivelling dogs in there, but they go into the business with the best of motives. And sometimes they believe they have a very good explanation as to why the retirement pension is such a disgusting level. They do. They have what they believe is a good reason. They're wrong. They are deluding themselves. There is no good reason. I repeat what I said. For the past 50 years, any person who was elected to the House of Commons and took the oath and did not enough about retirement pension should hang his or her head in shame. Whether they were elected 50 years ago, whether they were elected in a by-election last Thursday, and they're in the House now. Any politician who has gone to the House of Commons as an elected representative of this society should hang his or her head in shame over the retirement pension. It is a despicable treatment of elderly people. What do you say? 0161 228 2255. Got something to say? Get it said. And I repeat, some of those people that have gone to the House of Commons are friends of mine, and I promise you, I've told them to their face what I've just told you. And none of them have an answer other than, well, you know, the electorate and the tax revenue and all. That's what they say. That's the response. To which I say, you're there to sort it, you snivelling dog. It's getting on for 12:30. Ian in Knutsford, I'm a heterosexual, but I don't feel the urge to justify myself by prancing about with hardly anything on the back of a lorry through Manchester. Ian in Knutsford. No, you don't, but I bet you do sometimes. I bet you like certain parades. You're in Knutsford. I bet from time to time you've nipped into Warrington when the Christians do it. They'll wander about carrying their statues. The Italians do it here, carrying their statues. Well, the Gay Pride Parade, well, it's just another parade. Manchester, as I say, we have the Italian festival, don't we? What do they call it? The Italian marches, all sorts of different names, where they all carry the saints round on their shoulders. It strikes me as being a bit balmy, but they like it and nobody gets hurt. They do that. We have don't we, St Patrick's Day, when all the Irish come along and we all pretend we're Irish and we drink green Guinness, apparently, and we have a cracking time. It's just another march. And then, of course, we have Gay Pride, when all the gay people and some of their friends get sorted out and do pretty pageants on lorries. It's just a parade. Lord Mayor's parade. He comes down, or she, with a big chain and all that. Let's all have a party. Look, we're always having parades in Manchester. So to say that you're a heterosexual and you don't feel the need to justify yourself in that way, yeah, absolutely. Why should you? But that doesn't decry those that do wish to justify themselves in that way. Or are they not justifying themselves? Are they just simply having a party? Nothing wrong with having a party at all. 0161 228 2255. Keith in Blackpool says bullfighting was on the menu a couple of days ago. Well, it's not a menu, but yeah, bullfighting was on the menu. And he sent me... He sent me a YouTube thing where there's a load of men on seesaws avoiding the bull. I think that might be taking a mick, but nevertheless, quite entertaining in its own way. Christopher says the Ohurugu medal is tarnished. At least Dwayne Chambers, who lost his court case to represent Great Britain, took one. Ohurugu should have been trying her hand at rugby league, as Chambers did. And then he says she's got the build for it. Well, that's probably a bit harsh. But that's Chris in Middleton. So, yes, he says the Ohurugu gold medal is tarnished, in that she was prevented from taking part forever because she failed to attend for 3 consecutive drug tests. There are those that say that is worthy of caution in the party. Dave says, why do you have to have a parade just because a person is gay? I don't expect a fuss because I prefer females. Well, some of the people who are gay do. The women, obviously. Or because my missus prefers men. Can we have a parade celebrating overweight, grey-haired, bearded blokes who like French cooking? Can we have a parade for the bugger all party? Well, I think in some ways gay pride is a... Never mind, perhaps I won't go there. 0161 228 2255.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Obviously, some of them are fussy. Anyway, 500 years ago, says Dave, 500 years ago, you were put to death for being homosexual. 100 years ago, you were put into jail for it. 40 years ago, it was made legal. And then he says, I'm off before it becomes compulsory. Allan Beswick for Prime Minister, says Dave. I'm afraid it's too late. I can't be the Prime Minister because Jeremy Clarkson is going to be the next one. Kev says in St Helens, whilst I have mixed thoughts on the discrimination of homosexual acts, it's something that I suppose we have to live with in this liberal thinking age. What I don't like is the flaunting of their sexuality by so-called celebrities on TV. It makes me feel sick at times. Why, for God's sake, do they have to remind us at every given opportunity? And why are so many homosexuals employed by the BBC on numerous shows watched by families? Too many to mention. No wonder our kids are so mixed up with their values on life. Well, that's his thought. Well, frankly, I don't think watching people on telly who happen to be homosexual will make me homosexual. I've worked alongside them. I've had them as friends, as they say. Some of my best friends are gay. And it's not made me go that way at all. In fact, I can't quite make the logic, because obviously being a rugby player, well, ex-rugby player, ex-soldier, and going to the gym every morning, I see the odd todger, and frankly, they're bloody ugly. They are. Come on. Obviously, I haven't seen mine for months, but years, in fact. But they are. Why anyone would be into, whatever your gender, why anyone would be interested in that? Dear God. Michael in Biddulph did the predictable gag. Private members bill for gay pride. Steady. Is gay pride really keeping your member private? Well, yes, it is. Being gay does not mean that you will do it with anybody, providing they're the same gender as you. It doesn't mean that. Gay is not equal to promiscuous. It's not. It's not. Every gay person, they're not all at it like knives. As I said, some of them are as fussy as you. Most of them are as fussy as you. Also, says Michael in Biddulph, do you know if there are any parliamentary guidelines that deal with how many times an MP can be involved with a homosexual scandal before it starts affecting their position? No, there is none, because I don't think there's any such thing as a homosexual scandal. There's not. There's a scandal, but no. How on earth would paying tax on a winter fuel allowance mean that it would then automatically go to the needy? Surely it would just increase overall government revenue. Well, it wouldn't increase it. It would diminish the amount they're paying out because money would go back. But, yeah, it would go... If they paid the winter fuel allowance to every retirement pensioner, as they do, they are simultaneously paying to those who are needy, but they are also paying to those who have no need of it. We could all do with 250 quid, but they're paying it to those who have no need of it. So those who have no need of it would be taxed on it. The needy, their income would not be taken to a level at which they would need to pay tax on it, so they would keep it all. Those who are a little better off would pay tax on it, so their benefit, if you like, their overall income would increase by a smaller amount. Still as much as 60% of it, but a smaller amount. So that's where the flaw in that particular way forward is. But at least it would mean that some of it was clawed back into the Exchequer. And what I object to with these one-off payments to all is that a lot of people get it that don't need it. Rather like in October, I apparently will be entitled to travel free on certain buses. Frankly, I have no need of that benefit. I'm not decrying it, I'm just saying that I'm comfortable in that I've got a reasonably paid job and I don't need somebody else to pay my bus fares. Now, I will apply for the pass because, well, it's one of those landmarks in your life, isn't it? And it'll be in a frame on the bog wall, along with my fingerprints and my various rejection slips for jobs. I'll be on the bog wall with those because it's an interesting thing. But that's it. It won't be used until I need to use it because I've got no money, which is nearer than you think. 0161 228 2255. If you want to join us today, you can. You can have your say on any subject that bothers you. Dave in Stalybridge. Hiya, Dave.
All right, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm not bad. What can we do for you?
Pensioners' heating payments.
Yeah.
The one that really, really grabs me is child benefit. I've been working now for 40-odd years, produced no kids, pay tax through the bloody nose, and pay for somebody else's sodding kids. If you want kids, pay for them yourself.
Indeed. And
a lot of people who are drawing I mean, all right, there are some needy pay cases, as with the heating allowance, but the majority of people, I would say, 50% guessing, don't need child allowance. Give it to the bloody pensioners.
Yeah, it's an historic benefit, is child allowance, isn't it? It was brought in at a time when most
women didn't go to work.
Well, not only that, that wasn't the only cause of it. The great thing, it's changed slightly now, but the great thing about child benefit, or family allowance as it was called, it was paid on a book, and the book was owned by the mother.
Yeah.
So many a father came
go and do it up the wall.
Exactly. It went to the bookie, it went to the pub, it went to various places. And so they said, well, at least this is some income that the woman can have, that the mother can have, that will pay a minimum existence for the children. So the children get it, rather than giving it to the parent, who will then, to the father, who will then add it to the money he whittles against the wall. You're absolutely right in that respect. And in some respects, many people will agree with you. Why the hell should we these days be paying child benefit? We haven't got rickets anymore and all of those things. And I know, and you do too, lots of comfortably off families that save it up and use it for all sorts of luxurious
pay for the holidays.
things. Yeah, and pay for the holidays, luxuries of one sort and another. And again, it's one of those benefits where we are paying it out to people who, quite in many cases, do not need it. It makes no sense. And the easy way round that is to, if we do want to give support to people and help them stand the cost of having children, again, make it a once and for all weekly payment or whatever, but tax it. Tax it, so at least...
Well, again, one of the points that you made when it was family allowance and it was given to the mother was at home while the husband was out working. She didn't claim unemployment benefit. She didn't get all these other benefits.
Well, women don't claim unemployment benefit now unless, of course, they've actually established themselves as a worker. I mean, unemployment benefit doesn't last forever. It's a contributory benefit. But it's a good thought, Dave. Thank you for sharing it. We must move on because it's time for this. And when I say time, I mean getting on for, well, just gone. 20 to 1 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Mark Edwardson.
Home Secretary has announced plans to further restrict the movements of paedophiles, including banning them from foreign travel. Manchester Airport's admitted it's interested in buying one of BAA's other airports, which could be about to come onto the market. That's after the Competition Commission said it would like to see more competition amongst airports. And the gay rights campaigner Leo Abbs has died at the age of 91. As an MP, he guided a private member's bill through Parliament. That was in 1967, which legalised sex between men. Manchester's weather, cloudy with showers and a top temperature of 19 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Well, if you're travelling on the M6 at the moment, traffic's moving very well indeed. I can't see of any major delays between Junction 18 at Middlewich all the way through towards Junction 23 at Haydock. Now, if you are heading around Earlham, though, traffic's slowing down on Liverpool Road. That's the A57. It's still queuing up, I'm afraid, because of a broken-down car westbound at Barton Road. That's heading from, affecting traffic heading from Salford towards Eccles. Thanks to Maria for your calls. Don't forget, though, if you can update me further, call in on the travel line. The number you need, 01612 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Will Perry.
Good afternoon. Live to Canterbury. Lancashire are in county championship action against Kent. Lancs, of course, had 3 consecutive home draws in the county championship, and they'll be looking for an improvement. Chris Malaban has the latest.
58 for 3 Kent in the 24th over, with Neil Dexter on 11 and with him Darren Stevens yet to score. Lancashire fighting back here for the first hour. Batting was plain sailing as Kent moved along to 41 without loss, and Lancashire struggled to create any problems. But Robert Key was then unluckily run out when a Joe Denley drive was deflected onto Key stumps at the non-striker's end by Sarge Mahmood, and that has started a collapse. 3 wickets going for 11 runs. Joe Denley, the next man out, caught by Loy off the bowling of Cork for 37, and then Cork struck again, trapping Martin van Jaarsveld LBW just moments ago to leave Kent at 52 for 3. Cork taking 2 for 3 in 15 balls, sending a message perhaps to those who've decided not to re-engage him next season. Lancashire, of course, including Chilton and Loy in place of Vincent and Sutcliffe. Kent having won the toss, 58 for 3.
Cheers, Chris. We'll have regular updates on Lancashire's game at Kent throughout the day here on BBC Radio Manchester. At the Olympics, Hyde's Michael Harvey has missed out on his second chance to make the Taekwondo semi-finals. He was beaten in the repechage. 3 medals for Great Britain in Beijing today means the team's now bettered the target of 35 set by UK Sport. Stockport's Kerry-Ann Payne took the silver, and Cassie Patton the bronze in the women's 10-kilometre marathon swim. The third medal came in the windsurfing as Bryony Shaw claimed bronze. Nikki Dempsey finished 4th. Also, Britain's Michael Rimmer has won his heat in the 800 metres. Meanwhile, the IOC has launched an investigation into the Ukrainian athlete Ludmila Blonska, as she's failed a drugs test. Now, Blonska won silver in the heptathlon, but will be stripped of her medal and thrown out of the Games if she's tested positive for an anabolic steroid. The big event in Beijing today is the men's 200-metre final. Jamaica's Usain Bolt, who of course cruised to victory in the 100 metres last week, is the favourite. That gets underway at 3:20 this afternoon. In Rugby League, Oldham have sent on loan centre Michael Brown back to Huddersfield Giants as a disciplinary measure. The 21-year-old joined the Ruffians on a month's loan just 12 days ago. In rugby union, New Sale Sharks signings will be starting in Friday's game against Leeds. Matthew Tate, Luke Abraham and David Doherty have all been selected, along with Dwayne Peel. That's for the game at Edgeley Park. And the Welshman Peel says he feels at home already.
Yeah, I think it's, it takes me back to when I first started Sheffield a bit. I suppose you have to keep your head down a bit and, work hard and try and, earn respect of fellow players. And, I think everyone's been very welcoming here and, made me feel right at home. And the boys have been great and, really settled in well. Very much looking forward to get the games underway now.
Manchester City manager Mark Hughes has revealed he's still in the hunt for another forward. Valery Bojanov's new long-term injury has seen City's striking options further reduced.
We're obviously short. I mean, we've three mainline strikers like a Benjani and Vass out for significant periods, 2-3 months, on top of Valery, who's likely to be out for 6 months. So, yeah, I mean, the onus on us now is to try and address that situation that we find ourselves in.
Rochdale manager Keith Hill believes his goalkeeper is more than just a conventional shot stopper. Sam Russell set up striker John Shaw for a goal at the weekend with a long pass out of defence, and Hill wants more of the same.
He's not everybody's cup of tea, Sam Russell, but I don't know why. He's probably one of the best passers in our football league. He is a bit flamboyant, but that suits me. Probably one of the reasons why I actually recruited Sam Russell. He is a very, very good football player, very good technically as a goalkeeper.
And finally, in racing, the York Festival has been abandoned because of a waterlogged course. The first 2 days had already been a washout.
Your Sunday Morning Lion with Mike Shaft.
Why do you think the numbers of people from black communities are so low when it comes to things like voting?
It's probably just part of a general sense of belonging. We must not allow ourselves to be self-excluded, if you like, and take every opportunity to take our rightful place.
Mike Shaft.
We usually have chaplains at these major sporting events. Should it not become part of the rules that they're allowed to be there?
China have provided the religious service centre and they then staff that with their own people.
Manchester's faith, spirit and life's difficult questions with Mike Shaft.
It is there for anybody who wants to partake of it.
Sunday morning from 7 on BBC Radio Manchester.
It's a good question that Mike Shaft asked that pastor then, isn't it? Why don't black people vote? No, it is. It's a good question. It's a choice. In this country, it's a choice. In America, black people vote in smaller proportions, if you will, smaller proportions of the black communities of America vote than the white communities of America. Fewer black people vote proportionately. In Africa, don't often get the opportunity to vote. Extraordinary. Why don't black people vote? Oh, yeah. Never really given it much thought, but it is an interesting question. Why don't black people vote? 0161 228 2255. You know the answer to that. Alan says, Derek in Lee. One thing about pensions has always puzzled me. We're continually told that we can't or won't be able to pay out pensions because of the increase in the number of senior citizens as people live longer. My question is, what happened to all the revenue collected over the past 60 years when people worked all their lives and died relatively quickly after retiring? Did it go to help the ever-increasing amounts paid to MPs? Derek in Lee. Well, people get confused about retirement pension. The retirement pension is not paid out as a result of a savings scheme. When you pay national insurance, it isn't a savings scheme. You're not saving up money in the government coffers so that they'll give it back to you later. The money that goes into the government coffers in national insurance is spent there and then. If you think about it, I mean, I know the retirement pension was introduced in 1908, but we can ignore all that. Post-war, and pick it up from post-war. When the government decided to introduce the National Health Service, from the day it began, 40 years ago, from the day it began, everybody was entitled to free treatment on the National Health Service at the point of use, free at the point of use. But they'd only just started to pay national insurance. So if you wanted it as a savings scheme, as you seem to be suggesting, Derek, if you want it as a savings scheme, you would have to pay in for 40 years before you would get anything out. So in terms of the benefit paid out, there wouldn't be any. There wouldn't be a national health scheme for the next 40 years from the moment of its inception. No, it was never an investment plan. It was always the money taken in taxes of various forms now will be spent now. That was it. That's how it's always been. So the answer to your question, what happened to all that money that was paid in? It paid the pensions of the people who, frankly, had never made any contribution because there'd been no national insurance to contribute. So on the day that retirement pensions came in, the people who were paying at that moment were the workers, and they were paying to give a pension to those who had retired. Like now, the people like me who are paying taxes now are paying for the pensions that are being paid out now, the retirement pensions. This is not investment pensions, this is national, state pensions. They're paid out of the government's current revenue. Now, the problem for the future is that whereas in the past there was X percent of people working and a considerably smaller Y percent of people retired, so it didn't cost each of the X percent much to provide the revenue for the Y, the number of people in the Y section, those who are retired and not earning, is now a greater proportion of the overall society, and consequently those in the X section is a smaller proportion. In simple terms, there are fewer people paying taxes to fund the retirement pensions of more people, a greater number of people. That's it. That's the problem. That's the equation that the government struggles with, that governments all over the world, all over the Western world, are struggling with. 0161, here endeth the reading. 0161 228 2255. If you want to join us, you can. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And, of course, 07786 206 951. If you've got something to say, then say it. What is it with all these people who have some sort of problem with gays? Why don't they take their self-imposed rejectionism and pee off with it? I don't know, Neil. Is it a quiz? Why don't they? Oh, it's not a quiz. All right, then. I have little understanding of prejudices of many kinds, most kinds. I just don't understand why you can, how easily it is for some and how easily some find it to hate a group of people. It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre. I can think of ways of hating individuals, and it's usually as a result of what they have done. Occasionally what they've done to me, I suppose, but I can't find a way in me of hating a whole group of people, whether they be a different ethnic background to me, a different financial background. I don't even hate the aristocracy. God almighty, I don't even hate the royals as people. I hate the concept. I don't hate the royals. I don't hate Prince Charles or William or any of the other children. I certainly don't hate Her Majesty. I don't hate any of them. I can't see the point. Now, if one of them gave me a smack on the snot box, I might hate them, but then I might give them a good smack on the snot box back. I don't know, but I don't hate them. I don't even hate Americans. I hate what America does sometimes internationally as a nation, but I certainly don't hate Americans. Good God, I don't even hate people from St Helens. I hate their bloody rugby team, but I don't... Do you know what I mean? How can you hate a group? How can you hate every homosexual? How can you hate every black man? Or if you're a black man, how can you hate every white man? Because racism isn't just one way, you know. How can you hate every copper? God almighty, I can't bring it in me to hate every paedophile, although I don't like many of them. And on that subject, what about Gary Glitter? And what about... Jackie Smith, the Home Secretary, is suggesting that the law needs to be tightened. We need to make it so that even fewer paedophiles are allowed to travel abroad. I don't understand that. I don't understand it. If these people are going to be misbehaving in our society and some other country is prepared to let them go there, frankly, I say let them. don't I? I mean, if I was the recipient country, if we got a phone call from, I don't know, Thailand saying, look, we've got this Taiwanese bloke, and we've convicted him of having sex with children, and we don't like him anymore, will you have him? I would expect and hope and support our government in the reply, no. But frankly, if some country wants to accept ours, they can have them. I've not got a problem with that. I don't understand. Why would we take the passport off them? Yes, it would be to protect people in a foreign land, but in general principle, that's not our government's job, is it? Or is it? Does it matter to you and me whether Gary Glitter comes home or not? Well, if he comes home, you certainly want to keep your kids away from him, wouldn't you? He may be a reformed character, you never know. It's perfectly possible, and he's done his time, so we must give him the opportunity to prove himself. But frankly, if he wants to go somewhere else, and somewhere else wants to have him, then I say, fair enough. It's a fair cop, you can have him. I do sometimes despair at the way our government interferes with other countries. It's not their job, whether it's poking their nose in and telling them what they should think, poking their nose in and telling them what they should believe, and poking their nose in and invading them, which we seem to do with alacrity from time to time. It's getting on for 1 o'clock. 0161 228 2255. Keith in Blackpool. I watched it and was saddened. He's on about the winner of the gold medal we were talking about earlier, Ms. Uhurugu. I watched it and was saddened. She's a drugs cheat and should never be allowed to run in any competition. However, there are only a few countries that have lifetime bans. If the ban had stood in GB, there was nothing to stop her from going to another country from whence her family originated and who don't have lifetime bans and running for them after a couple of years. Well, drugs cheat's probably a bit strong, frankly, but she did miss 3 consecutive drug tests. Now, she says it's because the administration of her personal life is somewhat disorganised. Well, OK, we might believe that, but the rules are the rules. And she did actually say at one point, apparently, that if she's not allowed to run for GB, she will run for, I think it was Uganda, but it might have been Nigeria. It's an African country anyway. But she said, well, fine, if I can't run for GB, I will run for that foreign country. Now, not foreign to her, that's where her antecedents are, apparently. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it? The objective, and I understand it, I fully understand it, her objective was to be the winner. So, to win the medal, she wasn't, and I don't think many of the athletes are. They're not winning the medal for Britain, they're winning it for them. That's it. They're not winning the medal for Britain. That cyclist who lives in Salford and has got legs like tree trunks, he's not riding for Britain. He happens to be in the British team. He's riding for him. He's riding because he wants to pit himself against the best in the world and prove that he is the best. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not to decry him in any way. But that doesn't make him a great hero of Britain. I don't know. He may well, had he been given the opportunity to ride for some other country for more money, he might have done it. I don't know. I don't care. He's riding for Britain. That is it. He thinks. No. He's riding for him. He's riding for him. He wants to be the best in the world. And if that means he's representing Britain and Britain help him to do it, then well done, Britain. But he's doing it. That lass said, yes, I run for Britain, but frankly, if you don't let me, I'll run for Nigeria. It's all the same to me. I'm just running. And rightly so. It does really remind us that the Olympic Games is no longer sensible. It's not. They are almost all professional athletes. They don't make a lot of money at it, some of them. I mean, some of them make millions. That Paula Radcliffe, she won't be getting a job when she stops the running. I don't think she'll have a job on the buses. I think she'll be all right. And why not? But they're not. They're doing it as a job. And they end up like freaks, like the strong man in the circus, catching the cannonball. Not everyone can do it. You have to be quite strong. It's a freak show. That's all it is. It's weird, but that's what it is. And the ones that aren't freaks don't win. That's it. They aren't. You look at a picture of that cyclist. Look at his legs. What? That's not a freak? He looks like he's wearing muscular saddlebags, for God's sake. That's no way for a human to be.
You'll hear from Professor Robert Winston. Plus, remember, just good friends, you'll meet Paul Nicholas. Tomorrow morning from 9 with me, Heather Stock.
If that was animals taking part in them competitions, they'd ban them. Oh, actually, no, they wouldn't. Unless they were dogs, and then the Kennel Club would approve of it, obviously. Because they're all rock boxes and all.
95.1 FM.
DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, paedophiles face tougher restrictions on foreign travel, and the site of the new Manchester Children's Hospital's hit by 10 arson attacks.
And Dominic Cork strikes twice before lunch for Lancashire.
Well, this afternoon is going to feel cool and it's going to be showery with just 1 or 2 sunny intervals. Top temperatures 19 Celsius.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Edwardson. The Home Secretary has announced plans to further restrict the movements of paedophiles. The measures include banning child sex offenders from travelling abroad for up to 5 years and confiscating their passports. Christine Beddoe from the children's charity ECPAT says the proposals don't go far enough.
We hope that not only about restricting travel, but the other call that we're making, which is to have stronger bilateral cooperation measures with other countries for joint investigations, to share our information more easily, more speedily with foreign countries, is actually really what's going to make the difference.
Meanwhile, Gary Glitter remains in limbo at Bangkok Airport after refusing to board flights to the UK, claiming he's unwell. The former glam rocker flew to Thailand when he was released from prison in Vietnam yesterday after serving almost 3 years for molesting young girls. Thai authorities have insisted he must leave their country. Manchester Airport's admitted it's interested in buying others, which could be about to come onto the market. A report by the Competition Commission says Britain's biggest operator, BAA, should sell 2 of its 3 London airports and either Glasgow or Edinburgh to increase competition. Jonathan Bailey's from Manchester Airport Group.
We'll be looking very closely at the areas where we can deliver value, and if we can't deliver value, we will walk away. And we're taking a long, cold look at each of the assets that are likely to be on the market, and we won't buy unless we can see that our shareholders will get value.
Talks are taking place to avert a series of baggage strikes at Manchester airports. Handlers and check-in staff are planning a walkout over pay. A new children's hospital in the grounds of Manchester Royal Infirmary has been hit by 10 arson attacks. Police are investigating the fires at the site of the new £500 million building that'll replace the Royal Manchester Children's Hospital and Booth Hall Children's Hospital next June. Laurie Yates reports.
It's important to stress that these weren't serious fires. They were very small fires. The damage was minimal. The fire service were called and they put them out. No one was injured and there was very little disruption caused. But police are treating these fires so seriously because, of course, they took place on the site of a hospital, and because this wasn't the first time a fire had taken place this month, and police believe it may be the same person who's doing it.
An 85-year-old Rochdale woman was punched in the face and dragged to the floor by a robber intent on stealing a pension book. The woman suffered head injuries, a broken leg and a broken wrist in the attack near Greenbank Road. She was treated at Rochdale Infirmary and is now in a stable condition. Police are appealing for witnesses. Now, can you help find a flasher who left 2 10-year-old girls traumatised in North Manchester? It happened mid-afternoon on Saturday on Plant Hill Road in Blakely. He'd been sat in the back, in a black Vauxhall Astra before exposing himself to the children. The gay rights campaigner Leo Abbs has died at the age of 91, according to a family friend. The former Labour MP guided a private member's bill through Parliament in 1967, which legalised sex between men. He died after a short illness at Charing Cross Hospital in West London. And music fans say their tickets for last weekend's V Festival didn't turn up. Perhaps you're amongst the hundreds who are claiming they've been ripped off by a website called SOS Master Tickets. The site's now vanished without trace, and it's thought many people also bought tickets for them for this weekend's Reading and Leeds festivals. Phil Thomas from Trading Standards says buying tickets online can be risky.
It's easy to sit in the comfort of your own home and think all is well when you're just a few clicks away from getting ripped off. You know, if you were going to buy a second-hand car and you ended up under a railway arch somewhere, your suspicions would be aroused, but obviously you just don't know easily who you're dealing with.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Will Perry.
Live to Canterbury, Lancashire have just gone in for lunch on day one of the county championship match at Kent. Departing Dominic Cork has been in on the action. Chris Mellaband, is this the backlash we've been hoping for?
Well, I think it might well be, Will. This has been a morning of two halves. For the first hour, then Kent were dominant, 41 without loss. Then Robert Key was unfortunately run out for 7, and then it became Lancashire's morning. Denley went to Cork for 37, and then Van Jarspo went LBW to Dominic Cork for just 1, a ball that he went back to and would have hit Midland off stump. So Dominic Cork showing his detractors what they might be missing next season. He's picked up 2 of the 3 wickets at lunch. Kent are 61 for 3.
Cheers, Chris. Oldham have sent on loan centre Michael Brown back to Huddersfield Giants as a disciplinary measure. The 21-year-old joined the Ruffians on a month's loan just 12 days ago. 4 of Sale Sharks' new signings will start in Friday's game against Leeds. Dwayne Peel, Matthew Tate, Luke Abraham and David Doherty have been selected for the game at Edgeley Park. The big event at the Beijing Olympics today is the men's 200-metre final. Jamaica's Usain Bolt is looking for a double after winning the 100 metres. That gets underway at 3:20 this afternoon. And finally, in racing, the entire York Festival has been abandoned because of a waterlogged track.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, the unsettled weather continues as we go through this afternoon. It does feel cool and breezy. There's a lot of cloud around. We're going to get a mix of sunny intervals and 1 or 2 showers, and those showers could turn out to be on the heavy side. Top temperatures today, 19 Celsius.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
You all right? Good-o. Marvellous. Alan, says Derek, who was dealing with... he asked the question about where did all the money go that was paid in all that time ago. Anyway, Derek says this. Re the pensions conundrum. You're right, it is a conundrum. Re the pensions conundrum. We would have a better chance of providing our pensioners had we not sold off the family silver by privatising public utilities, ditto North Sea oil revenue. Just look at the standard of living enjoyed by Norwegian citizens. Well, OK, I don't know the standard of living enjoyed by Norwegian citizens, nor do I know the amount of tax that they pay in order to have that standard of living provided by state, if indeed it is. So you have me at a loss there. However, not selling off the public utilities on the face of it sounds like it would have saved money. And indeed, we may well now be earning money from it, but I'm not sure that's true. I'm a great believer in state-owned facilities. I think water, electricity, gas and such like transport should be state-owned. I do, but that's just me, an old dyed-in-the-wool lefty, I suppose. That's what I think. But imagine the situation if we owned, for example, I don't know, electricity production. Electricity production at the moment is very, very expensive. We'd have to pay cash for all them wind farms. And they might not work. We'd still have to pay for them. We'd have to pay for all the nuclear power stations that are going to be built. We'd have to pay for all of that. So, I don't know, the capital infrastructure of such production is very, very, very expensive. Rather like the roads, and we can't afford them, it would seem. Bill in Royton, it seems that the whole idea of state benefits and the system used to put them into effect needs a radical lookout, because you've been on about people who gain benefits and yet don't need them, and on the other hand, we are regularly told that there are many other people who are entitled to the benefits and yet do not claim them. You're absolutely right, Bill. I can't remember who it was. I think it was the Liberals, and I don't mean the Lib Dems. I think it was prior to that. But I think in the days, the dying throes of the then Liberal Party, I think they argued for all benefit. If any Liberals are listening, that's narrowed it down in Manchester on it. But if any Liberals, traditional Liberals, are listening, and I'm wrong about your party, do feel free to correct me. But I think the Liberals were about the idea, they certainly floated the idea of doing away with the benefit system as such and effectively saying that everybody is allowed a specific income related to their family needs. So a man, wife, man, woman, 2 children would be entitled to X amount of money. And that money would be paid to them by the state, full stop. No adding on for this, that and the other, just that would be a fixed sum. However, if of course they earned above that, they would pay tax on every penny above it. So everybody would be entitled to benefit. I'd get benefit, you'd get benefit, everybody would get benefit. But those of us that have an income above the benefit level would have to pay tax on every penny above the benefit level at a fixed rate, everybody paying the same. I'm not offering that as a solution to the problem, nor indeed a stab at it, but I think there was a party that put that forward, and I'm almost sure that it was the Liberal Party. I'm almost sure, but if wrong, well, that's fine. You let me know, I'm sure you will. 0161228 2255, Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And, of course, text is available, 0161228 2222. Hang on. That's the number. Text is available on 07786 206 951. So there. Sounds easy? Well, that's because it is easy. Yeah. And you can talk about anything, all sorts. Have been annoying me in the papers today. All that stuff about... There's a thought. We own, you and me, the council taxpayers of Greater Manchester, own Manchester Airport. Doesn't feel like it when you're going through and they're charging you all that money for parking, and you've got to walk 5 miles dragging a case because you're not prepared to pay. You're not prepared to pay to go in a taxi because they only let taxis up to the door and all that caper. It doesn't feel like you own it, but you do. You and me own it, and currently it makes a profit, and that profit goes into yours and my council tax coffer. Does. Not a lot. It's not a huge amount of money because of all the development plans and all the rest of it and the constant expansion, but there's some every year. Local authorities, almost every year, local authorities have got a payment from Greater Manchester Airport, if you like, because that's what it technically is. Now, the largest shareholder by far is Manchester City Council. The other local authorities own shares, but not as many as Manchester. I might be right in saying that Manchester owns half. I might be, and the others are spread. The other half spread out amongst the 9 authorities, but I could be wrong in that. But anyway, it's owned by you and me. So you and me surely should have a say, although we're not direct shareholders. We should have a say whether we want it buying airports in other areas. And if Manchester Airport buys, I don't know. Well, if Manchester Airport buys one of the big ones in London, so let's say it buys Gatwick. Don't know whether it's got the money to buy Gatwick, but it'd have to borrow it. But if Manchester Airport buys Gatwick, what would be the consequences for Manchester? Not just Manchester Airport, but Manchester. For example, British Airways has just pulled out of Manchester. Now, OK, they've gone to Heathrow, but British Airways are just signing up and have just signed up a sort of working agreement with American Airlines, who still fly out of Manchester. Will they continue to do so? Manchester Airport at the moment fights tooth and nail, and I hasten to add, very, very successfully, to bring airlines to Manchester. They lose a few along the way, and the loss of British Airways was a blow. It was a blow. They tarted it up with a press release, but it was a blow. They weren't happy with that, and still aren't, whatever they might tell you publicly. They were shafted by British Airways. But you imagine if Manchester Airport owns Gatwick. The money they can make from Gatwick is substantially greater than any money they can make from Manchester. Will they become their own competitor? Will Manchester Airport become the second most important thing in the airport's crown? So, in other words, could we, in the future, I'm not predicting this, I'm just wondering, could we in the future end up in a situation whereby Manchester Airport plays second fiddle to Gatwick? Well, all right, it does at the moment in many ways, but it's trying not to. But can you see the situation where it's in the interest of the Manchester Airport company, or I don't know what we'd call it then, the Manchester Airport Company, would it be in their interest at any point to enhance Gatwick at the expense of Manchester? And if it is, we lose service. We might make more profit, presuming we still own the company that owns Manchester Airport and therefore would own the company that owned them both. But if that is the case, we might make more profit, but we could in the end lose service. It's something we have to consider. I'm not suggesting that will happen. Something we've got to watch for, isn't it?
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxbury.
Eamon and Diane.
I've got a photograph for you.
It's a charcoal grey cat. Oh my God, it's got 4 ears. It looks as though it's got one of those.
It looks like it's going to a cat fancy dress party as a cat.
Eamon and Diane and you.
Digital passport. I've got one, and I actually came through on Friday from Spain. You look at a mirror, quickly scans you, and then it lets you through. Trouble, of course, with speeding it up is you've still got to stand and wait for your luggage, so you're only rushing for another queue.
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
That had the nation gripped.
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
Alan in Warrington. Hiya, Alan.
Hiya. Didn't you just say if you were, if the government owned all the electric companies? Hello?
Yeah. Go on, I'm listening.
I thought you'd gone off then. That we'd have to pay for all the building all these nuclear power stations.
Correct.
Right. Didn't the government announce a few weeks ago that we'd have to pay like 78 billion to renew or build them?
We will have to put some money into them, yes.
Well, why should we when it's privatised?
Because they won't get built if we don't, which is the stupidity of it all. But the problem is that we would have to not only pay for them, we would also have to pay for the decommissioning of them and all sorts of other terrible things too, which currently is partially paid by private enterprise.
So when they build these new ones then, if they're paying 78 billion to build them, why can't we, the government, own them from them?
Because 78 billion, A, won't be enough to build them, and the government has the point of view, and consecutive governments have had this point of view now. And frankly, when you look back at some of the service we had previously, governments are not very good at running things.
Right. Plus, that 78 billion, that could pay for all the pension money that they're short.
Well, it could pay for all the pension money that they're short, and you know, if you look at the way that governments spend money, it is always the case that they spend most money on something else, if you follow me. If you look at the National Health Service, you think, blimey, that's a lot of money they spend on that. Well, frankly, they spend more money on everything else. Yeah. You look at pensions, they spend more money on everything else. That's always the way. It's always the way that the bit you look at, you can argue, well, OK, take it off there, take it off there, take it off there, put it into that. We could solve the pensions crisis overnight. We could solve what's described as a problem in the National Health Service overnight, but something else would have to go.
Yeah, oh, plus all their decorating money for their houses.
There's that as well, yeah. I mean, frankly, that's a red herring, because in government terms, it's buttons.
I know,
it's absolute buttons. It's just bloody annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I say, why should we pay? They privatise them and then they're still pumping billions in. Why? It's just wasting our taxpayers' money, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly spending the taxpayers' money. The issue as to whether it's a waste or not is dependent. For example, if they don't get built in this country, if nuclear power stations don't get built in this country, what do we build instead? What do we do instead? If the private companies say, well, we're not spending the money, we could actually, and this has happened in parts of the world, not here yet, but it's been close here once or twice, we could actually run out of electricity.
Yeah.
And it's the government's job, part of the government's job, not their only job, but it's part of the government's job, to make sure that we have sufficient clean water, sufficient power, sufficient all sorts of things, including roads, trains and the rest of it, to make the country run. Because if we don't, then everybody's knackered.
Yeah, well, they should stop paying all these advisors as well. We'll have more money as well, don't we?
Well, again, it's the old story, isn't it? Have you bought your own house, Chris?
Oh, my name's Alan, yeah.
Sorry, Chris, I'm going to talk to Chris in a minute. I'm sorry, Alan.
Yeah.
Have you bought your own house?
Yeah.
would it have been better for you to not pay the advisors? The advisors I'm referring to are, for example, the surveyor, the solicitor, the person at the building society or bank who did all the work on the finance.
Yeah, hello, all right then.
So to buy your house, you actually shelled out probably in the region of £1,000 to advisors.
Yeah, yeah.
You could have saved all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, but like you say, they go to, all these government MPs, don't they, supposed to go to college and universities.
Well, yeah, but they don't go that to college. I mean, it's rather like, Chris, when you decide to buy your house, what you need is a man who's been to college. Go and see the doctor, he'll sort it out for you. And then it'd be a fat lot of use, wouldn't it? I've got the surveyor around, he's going to do the ironing. Good on you, mate. And I know your name's Alan, my apologies. Stop calling him Chris, says the producer. So he is alive. 0161 228 2255. My apologies, Alan. Email from Chris we shall deal with before too long. Or maybe it's an email from Alan, who can say? It's 1:20. News headlines. Mark Edwardson.
The Home Secretary's announced plans to further restrict the movements of paedophiles, including banning them from foreign travel. Manchester Airport's admitted it is interested in buying one of BAA's, which could be about to come onto the market. It's after the Competition Commission said it would like to see more competition amongst airports. And Washington signed an agreement with Warsaw, which will see US missile interceptors built on Polish soil. That's angered Moscow. Manchester's weather, cloudy with showers. Expect top temperatures of about 19 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Taking a quick look firstly to the cameras around the Macclesfield area, and I'm having I'm just taking a look there. I can see queues on Highbull Road. It's the A537. One lane's actually blocked off because of a broken down lorry around the junction with Huddersfield Road, I should say. It's causing delays back onto the Silk Road. Aside from that, though, every other route heading into and out of Manchester doesn't seem to be doing too badly. Well, the main routes, for instance, the M602 moving well between junction 1 through towards the M62. No major issues either across the Mancunian Way. The elevated section not doing too badly at all from Regent Road in towards Fairfield Street around the Piccadilly area. Don't forget, if you can update me further, call in if you can on the travel line. The number 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
2020 traffic means you get an update every 20 minutes through the day. 2020
And I'll just deal with this email from Chris in Denton so that I don't fall into the pit of calling everybody Chris. Anyway, Manchester City owner Thaksin Shinawatra is allegedly seeking asylum in the UK, and the trials are still taking place in his homeland. Don't you think the Premier League should oust him from control of Manchester City to save the face of English football and Manchester City? Surely he must now fail the fit and proper conduct used to judge owners. Well, he's not been found guilty yet, and perhaps he won't be. And then we have to consider whether the trial was fair or not. So whether he's fit and proper, I don't know. But at the moment, he's guilty of nothing in our law and theirs. So from that point, and I've no idea whether he's seeking asylum or not, or even if he'd get it. I don't think he has any need for it, really. He's in this country, is free to move about as he pleases. I don't know whether he needs asylum. Anyway, so there. And of course, if he was found guilty of something horrid and declared to be no longer a fit and proper person to own a football club, he's then got the problem of selling it. Who in the name of God would buy that? Malcolm in Wigan. Hiya, Malcolm.
Hiya. Hi, I'm going to talk a bit on this Georgia conflict.
OK.
Well, I mean, the first thing that struck me about it was that there was an over-hasty reaction against the Russians by Brown and then later by Cameron. It seems to me that it was actually the Georgians who committed the initial aggression. That's my understanding of it, by invading this autonomous region, South Ossetia.
Well, the problem is your definition, isn't it? Is South Ossetia an autonomous region? And the Georgian government would argue, and I think world politics might argue, that it wasn't. It was deemed to be, by those who make these decisions, to be part of Georgia. It didn't like it, that's for sure. South Ossetia wanted to join North Ossetia, which is part of Russia, because a very large proportion, if not the majority of citizens in South Ossetia held Russian passports. But it isn't part of Russia and is, in international eyes, part of Georgia.
Well, I didn't say that. I said, I mean, the point is that there's two pieces of behaviour that I think are out of order by the Georgian leader. In fact, there's probably more, right?
I think there are quite a lot more in everybody's mind, but go on.
But the first one is that he's locked up his opposition leader, claiming to be a Democrat. Secondly, this invasion of his own country, as you describe it...
As the international rules describe it, not me, but go on.
Yeah, as the current borders are defined. I mean, I would say... But the point is, that is highly abnormal. I mean, as we know, you and me have discussed over the years, the possibility of Scotland becoming independent. Now, just because Scotland desires to break away, or some people within it do, that does not justify us, the English or the English and Welsh, in using shells to bomb villages on the border. Do you see what I'm saying? And that is the behaviour of not so much of a Democrat as a military dictator. I would describe him as that. And then it subsequently has apparently introduced martial law. Now, you know, I don't see the behaviour of this guy. And the other thing is, I don't believe that he actually got his plan passed by the Georgian Parliament. It wasn't discussed. Now, if they're going to describe him as a Democrat, when he locks up his opposition leader, he launches military action against his own people. I find this very dodgy. That's all I'm basically trying to say about it.
I don't think there would be many reasonable people that disagree with you. However, foreign diplomacy and reasonableness are rarely equal bedfellows.
Yes, I take your point there. Yeah, they often aren't. Yeah,
indeed, most often aren't. But the general principle, and it's a bit rich coming from the United Kingdom and indeed from the United States, given their profligacy, their proclivity to invasion when they feel like. But you can't internationally say that Georgia invaded South Ossetia, because it's like saying that England invaded Lancashire.
Well, it's like saying England invaded Scotland. That's the point.
Well, indeed, that is equally correct.
Because
you can say that Russia broke the international law because Russia crossed the state boundary and invaded another country.
Well, what I understand about that, I think is slightly maybe admire, is that they already had peacekeepers there, which apparently was internationally agreed. They had peacekeepers in South Ossetia because of the previous, disagreements between the Georgians, the Abkhazians, and the South Ossetians. They had them there already. Now, if you've got peacekeepers who then get fired on, and people in that autonomous region, as I'm describing it, I didn't say it was an autonomous region of Russia. It's an autonomous region of Georgia. But it may... I think the democratic thing to do, you see, strikes me, would be to give the people a vote. Give the people in Abkhazia a vote, and give the people in South Ossetia a vote. I mean, if we're going to preach to other people about how this guy's a democratic leader, give the people a vote in South Ossetia, have an internationally agreed referendum to see whether they want to. That's what's going to happen in Scotland, and why shouldn't it happen there? So that's my solution.
The problem is it wouldn't solve the problem. It might solve, if we isolate the problem of the two disputed areas that the Russians are interested in and the Georgians are in. I forgot the name of it, Abkhazia or something like that.
Yeah, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Yeah,
Abkhazia and South. If we just look at that conflict, but Russia going into Georgia has absolutely nothing to do with South Ossetia or Abkhazia, or for that matter, Georgia. Russia has gone into Georgia for the simple reason that it wants to say to America, we are quite happy to cross the border with tanks. And
no, hold on. Let's be clear. They only did that after...
Listen to what I was going to say, because you might actually end up agreeing.
Okay, right.
The reason Russia invaded, if that's the right word, crossed the border violently with tanks. I know they had military personnel there, but crossed the border violently with it. The only reason they did that was to say to the United States, we are prepared to cross borders with fighting tanks to protect our interest. And the reason they wanted to say that was to imply to the Americans that if you put weapon sites in Poland, we will come in and knock them out.
Well, you said interests, right? The Russians haven't emphasised the use of the word interests. They've used interests. You said to protect their interests. They've said that they simply were engaging in a humanitarian venture to protect their own citizens who are being shelled by an apparently Western-backed government.
The interest element there was to protect citizens of our state. That was the interest. But that's not what it's about. Russia doesn't give a toss about its people, otherwise it would have so many of them in the salt mines. It doesn't care.
I wouldn't say that. I would say, hold on, if you're going to say that, then in fairness, you could say that the British government doesn't give a toss about its citizens because it sends them to be massacred in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Well, they're not citizens
and America.
They're not citizens who the government have deemed are naughty. They are citizens who have volunteered to do that. But I come back to the original thought, and that is that if you take Georgia in isolation, you come to one conclusion. If you then look at the wider issue, and the wider issue at the moment is the conflict between Russia and America, primarily, not exclusively, primarily about missile sites in Poland that Russia are very, 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 very afraid of and against, and consider to be an assault. What we actually have at the moment over Poland is a standoff, which hopefully will remain that way, similar to Cuba.
Oh, I think this is a bit overplayed, Alan. I think that the point about the Star Wars thing, the Strategic Defence Initiative, whatever name it's being given these days, is that it's one of these ideas that comes up every 10 years. It's proposed. The US Congress sometimes gives it a bit of money, and then a subsequent Democrat Congress, due to financial constraints, quashes it later. That's happened 2 or 3 times. Reagan tried to push this idea. You know, I think Star Wars. It's been overplayed.
Well, but this isn't Star Wars. This is, in the case of Star Wars, the Americans, Reagan particularly, was dealing in a Cold War world and was saying, we're going to put rockets in space. Ludicrous, it was never going to work, but we're going to put rockets in space that will shoot down Russian rockets when they head towards America. That was Star Wars. This isn't about that. This is rather more conventional. And the weapons in Poland are not designed to fight Russia, say the Americans. They're actually designed to scare the bejeebers out of Iran.
Well, as I say, I didn't come on to talk about the Star Wars.
Well, that's the great problem. You can't talk about Georgia without talking about the issues that lead to it, and the issues that lead to it.
The point is, listen, let's get this right. I think that the Georgian guy was being an opportunist because, for one thing, I mean, he started it, but he did it very cleverly. He did it on the day that the Olympics began, hoping that Putin or Medvedev would not respond because they would be too busy, and it would be a low-level little bit of aggression. He would try to regain this 70. Yes. It's only 70,000 people who live there, or whatever it is. 100,000.
You are absolutely correct. It's not a coincidence that on the day it started is not a coincidence. You're absolutely correct.
And it was clearly that implies a degree of premeditation, but it was also secretive because, as far as I know, he didn't get it passed by the Georgian Parliament. Okay, which is highly irregular for a democratic country, and yet we're hearing all this talk of how Georgia needs to be brought. It's a democratic country. He's locked up his opposition leader. In fact, if there is a democratic country between the two, it strikes me Russia which doesn't lock up opposition leader. The Zyuganov is the leader of the opposition. He's in the Russian parliament. They democratically elected their president. This guy came to power by some kind of an uprising. I mean, who's the Democrat in this situation?
I've never got troubled by the concept of democracy in the Caucasus. But David in Crumpsall has just sent this. Read the Georgian invasion of South Ossetia. You could draw a parallel of Britain invading Northern Ireland and imposing military rule there. Actually, there's a further comparison of Russia giving South Ossetian Russians passports and Britain settling Scots in Northern Ireland. So he has a point. Good on you, Malcolm.
OK, thank you.
And good on you, David. Thank you both very much indeed. 0161 228 2255. If you want to join us, feel free. And the Georgia we're discussing is not the one that was on the mind of that soul singer. Your caller, Chris, is automatically anti-Georgian because of its association with the USA. I've heard him before, and if it's an anti-American position, he'll adopt it. Yeah, but that doesn't make him wrong, does it? Come on, be reasonable now. 0161 228 2255. Colin in Bolton via text. As a civilised country, our government has the obligation to protect foreign children abroad from British child abusers, because the protection of children is more a moral issue than a political one. You're absolutely right, Colin, and the government actually framed legislation some years ago to avail themselves of precisely that. Unfortunately, they've only used that legislation about 6 times. In other words, they've allowed paedophiles to travel. I nearly said willy-nilly. That would have been terrible, wouldn't it? They've allowed paedophiles to travel abroad with alacrity, frankly, whenever they felt like, and have not been bothered and have not been involved. They could have stopped Gary Glitter going abroad. They had the legislation to prevent it, but they didn't. Now they're talking about making more legislation. We don't need more legislation. We need a government with the balls to implement the legislation they've got. But I repeat, why is it of any interest to us what British citizens do abroad? I know we are interested in protecting children, but if we're interested in protecting children, are we more interested in protecting children than we are in protecting others? Should we allow thieves to go abroad? Should we allow drink drivers to go abroad? They might run over a child. Drink driver goes on holiday. God almighty, should we allow 2 doctors who are married to go abroad? Because 2 doctors who are married go abroad, don't look after their children properly and get it snatched by a paedophile. Where do you want to draw the line? 0161 228 2255. George Galloway and Tony Benn organised mass demonstrations when America invaded Iraq. But when Russia invades Georgia, there is a deafening quiet. That's from Albert in Lee. You must address that to them. Martin in Bramall referenced the proposed referendum. I may be cynical, but suspect that they will not ask a straightforward question such as, do you want a congestion charge, yes or no? But will wrap it up in a series of politician-speak type questions so that the majority of voters will be misled into voting yes. Your comments, please. And it's an awfully good programme, he said. But Martin, I would probably agree with your statement if it were not for the fact that some of the local authorities who are diametrically opposed to the congestion charge will probably not permit such gobbledygook, because there will be a gobbledygook impasse, a showdown at the gobbledygook corral, if you will, because those local authorities who are against the referendum will want gobbledygook question to favour them, and those who are for will want a gobbledygook question to favour them. And we have yet to have the gobbledygook meetings at which all the different people wrestle. My fear is that we will have 10 different questions according to the nuances of the council concerned. Manchester City Council, if they were going to fiddle it, would fiddle it for yes. Trafford Council, if they were going to fiddle it, would fiddle it for no. I think they are going to be their own watchdogs. I think all of them will eventually agree one particular question, and the question will have to be gobbledygook free to get past all the hurdles. Rather like when those who are very much in favour of the congestion charge argued that there should be a Greater Manchester-wide referendum. Well, first of all, they argued there shouldn't be a referendum at all. Dear God, the last thing we want is the public making their minds. God forsake us all that the public are given a choice. Anyway, once they were bullied into that with intellectual cudgels, they finally said, well, all right, we'll have a referendum. Then the argument went, should it be Greater Manchester-wide, in which case they could hide away the fact that some councils were against it. Then it was, well, OK, we'll have it council-wide. We'll have 10 questions or 10 referenda throughout the councils simultaneously. And we will go on the majority vote 7-3 on the councils. So you're right to be afraid, but I think the diametric opposition of certain individuals, as I say, the showdown at the gobbledygook corral, will protect us from that. But we will yet have to wait and see, and we really ought to keep our eye on them. Not that they cannot be trusted, but that they just, why should we trust them? Why not just be given a straightforward question? Do you want to vote in favour of the congestion charge or against it? A simple yes, no. Bit of an interlude, as they used to say. Sam Walker today, for those who care, is at the Bowling Green Hotel in Chorlton from 2. Apparently, it's their 100th birthday. Happy birthday to you. It's just after 20-2. BBC Radio Manchester News headlines. Michelle Adamson.
The Home Secretary's announced plans to further restrict the movements of paedophiles. Talks are taking place to avert a series of strikes at Manchester Airport. Baggage handlers and check-in staff are planning a walkout over pay. The former pop star and convicted paedophile Gary Glitter still at Bangkok Airport in Thailand after refusing to board a flight to London. He'd claimed he'd suffered a heart attack, but doctors say he is well enough to travel. Manchester's weather cloudy with showers this afternoon. Top temperature of 19 Celsius.
Gary Glitter in Bangkok. Quite a lot of people think they should.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, we're not doing too badly on the motorways around the area. The M60 Ring Road moving well between junction 23 at Ashland Line all the way through towards junction 18 at Sinister Island, clockwise and anti-clockwise. No reported delays either on the M67 or the M56 heading from junction 7 at Bowden through towards junction 4 at Withenshaw, east and westbound. If you're heading through Macclesfield, though, we are still having reports of delays on Highbull Road because of a broken down lorry around the Silk Road, causing delays back onto the Silk Road. So if you are travelling around that area and you can give me an update, call in if you can on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
I really must do geography sometime. I thought the Silk Road was in Afghanistan.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Joanne Smith.
Good afternoon. Well, live to Canterbury, where Dominic Cook struck twice early on for Lancashire in their county championship match against Kent. After 3 straight draws, it's been a good start, Chris Malband.
It has indeed, though. For the first hour, Kent were very much on top. 61 for 3 at the moment, just resumed after lunch, and it was been Lancashire's morning. Not for the first hour, when Key and Denley put on 41 with no real alarms for the first wicket, but when Key was rather unluckily run out when a Denley drive was deflected by Saj Mahmood onto the stumps at the non-striker's end, a mini collapse was triggered. Dominic Cork took 2 for 13 in his 9 overs as he picked up Denley for 37, caught by Malloy in the gully, and Martin van Jelsveld, who he trapped LBW for just 1. So suddenly Lancashire right back in this one. Dexter's on 12, Darren Stevens is on 2, 61 for 3.
Well, we'll have regular updates on Lancashire's game at Kent throughout the day here on BBC Radio Manchester. Manchester City have missed out on the signing of Marseille striker Djibril Cissé. Frenchman has agreed a season-long loan with Roy Keane's Sunderland, despite speculation linking him with the Blues. Former Bolton defender Alan Stubbs has been forced to retire due to a knee injury. He was due to play for Derby County this season. There's been success and disappointment at the Olympics for our local competitors. Hyde's Mike Harvey has just missed out on his second chance to make the Taekwondo semi-finals. He was beaten in the repechage. But elsewhere, Great Britain's won 3 medals today. meaning they've now bettered the target of 35 set by UK Sport. Stockport's Kerry-Anne Payne took the silver and Cassie Patton the bronze in the women's 10-kilometre marathon swim. The third medal came in the windsurfing as Bryony Shaw claimed bronze. Meanwhile, Manchester's Michael Rimmer has won his heat in the 800 metres. Meanwhile, the IAAF has confirmed Olympic heptathlon silver medalist Ludmila Blonsky is facing a life ban, having failed a drugs test. The Ukrainian can request a B test, but she's failed one test already in her career in 2003 and already served a 2-year ban. The big event in Beijing today is the men's 200-metre final. Jamaica's Usain Bolt, who of course cruised to victory in the 100 metres last week, is the favourite. That gets underway at 3:20 this afternoon. For Sale Sharks, new signings will start in Friday's game against Leeds. Matthew Tate, Luke Abraham and David Doherty have been selected, along with Dwayne Peel for the game at Edgeley Park. The Welshman Peel says he feels at home already.
Yeah, I think it takes me back to when I first started Llachie a bit. I suppose you have to keep your head down a bit and work hard and try and earn respect of fellow players. And I think everyone's been very welcoming here and made me feel right at home. And the boys have been great and really settled in well. Very much looking forward to get the games underway now.
Oldham have sent on loan centre Michael Brown back to Huddersfield Giants as a disciplinary measure. The 21-year-old joined Oldham on a month's loan just 12 days ago. And finally, in racing, the York Festival has been abandoned because of a waterlogged course. The first 2 days had already been a washout.
Join in the congestion conversation.
Tomorrow morning, we're at Asda at Robin Park in Wigan. I'm Jonathan Alley. Come and tell me what you think about Greater Manchester's big decision.
Charge or no charge? Tell us what you think. Manchester's congestion charge station is BBC Radio Manchester.
I always thought it was an odd name for a retail site. Robin Park.
Allan Beswick with you on the phone.
0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
You all right? Neil in Bebington says the problem with the nuclear reactors in the UK is that the 20-odd we have are well past their use-by date and are, in effect, inoperable. The reason, in my mind, the government wants a new generation of reactors is for cooking the fuel needed for our new nuclear weapons programme. Well, there's some truth. That was the upside of the downside, depending on which way you look at it. Ivor in Stretford, you mentioned on today's programme that at least some MPs go to the big house with the best of intentions. Do you think, therefore, that it's the parliamentary system that corrupts? And, if so, how quickly do you think the rot sets in? In addition, which of our current batch of idiots, fools or parties would you think is not easily corruptible? Maybe your listeners would like to suggest some candidates for the captain of the Honour Guard. I personally don't know enough about politics and parliamentary procedure to comment. Well, Ivor, I probably don't know enough about them to comment either. But as you well know, I've never let that get in the way. I think very few of our MPs, very, very few, a handful, 10 at the most, I don't know them, that's a statistic, 10 at the most are bribable. Now, what do you mean by corruptible? The great problem with corruption is sometimes you're not being corrupted. Our parliamentary system, because of its nature, our parliamentary system works on the basis of compromise. Now, the great problem with compromise is that instead of having one person absolutely chuffed because they won, and one person really ticked off because they lost, you have two people ticked off because neither of them got what they want, and both of them are having to live with something that they did want. Given that people are running round in circles for money and fame at the moment in Beijing, imagine the situation if instead of having a race, they negotiated who was going to win. And then they said, well, nobody's going to win. So in the boxing, instead of the two finalists in the boxing, you would end up with 7 people who were regarded as possible winners. And, I don't know, 1 person who's regarded as no chance of winning, and 8 people who are regarded as quite probably wouldn't win. Where would you give the medal? There would be no winner. That's the problem with parliaments, with democracy. Democracy is fantastic, but impossible. Impossible. It is. I think Winston Churchill described it as an absolutely rubbish system, but the best one we've thought of so far. Very, very difficult, democracy. So you go to Parliament as a dyed-in-the-wool lefty or a dyed-in-the-wool right-winger. Off you go to Parliament, and your objective is to achieve the renationalisation of, I don't know, the electricity industry. We were talking about that earlier. You go to Parliament with that, and somebody says to you, well, OK, we don't want to renationalise the electric business, but what we'll do is we'll do it, providing you're prepared to accept another 20 prisons. We'll build 20, and you say, well, I'm a left-winger, I don't agree with prisons. Well, I'm sorry, you're not getting the electric unless you get the prisons. One comes hand in hand. On the other side, the right-winger says, look, I'm coming to Parliament, we need to build another 20 prisons. And the left-winger says, we're not doing that, we're not building more prisons. No way, it's wrong. Well, you can't half-build them. Although, frankly, I've lived in council houses where they did. You can't half-build them. You've either got to build them or not. So what do? You do a deal. Well, OK, you can't have 20 prisons. You can have 10, providing we can have this. And that's how Parliament works. So it is constantly, people negotiating from the position they want to be in to the position that they're prepared to tolerate being in. And that's the best you can get. That's the best you can get, because it's democracy. It's about negotiating a solution to the crisis in front of you. It's not about getting everything that you think you want. So that's it. And I'm afraid when you get to the situation like the Tories had in the 80s, like Labour have had in the 90s, where the government has a massive majority and, frankly, can do whatever the hell it wants, you end up with crap government. You end up with firm government, but crap government. Hung parliaments. People are always laughing at the Italians because they've had hung parliaments for 60 years. But Italy still works. It's still there. It still gets by one way or another. Whereas what we've had for 60 years is ricocheting from the right to the left, from the left to the right and back. I don't know which is better. I just know that those are the alternatives. Dave in Salford, no, not Selfridges. Dave in Salford, I wonder where I'm going later. Dave in Salford says, he gives me the breakdown. It's from the airport website, he claims. I was more or less right. The City of Manchester, the Council of the City of Manchester owns 55% of Manchester Airport. Borough Council of Boughton, the Borough Council of Bury, the Oldham Borough Council, they share the rest. The other 9 share the rest equally at 5% apiece. So Bolton, Bury, Oldham, Rochdale, Salford, Stockport, Tameside, Trafford and Wigan all have 5% apiece, and Manchester City Council is the lead sharer, the overwhelming shareholder, and has 55%. Christopher says, this recent case illustrates how serious we take our children's care. 2 Greater Manchester men are in jail for 18 months for abduction after police discovered a 14-year-old girl in the car of one of them. And it gives the names and the addresses and all the rest of it. They were jailed at Munshall Street, Crown Court, Manchester, after they were convicted of child abduction by a jury last month. And they took the girl in the early hours of June 27 last year, and police officers found the girl in the car with them in a car park in Chadderton. They've been jailed for 18 months for child abduction. Well, is that worse than what Gary Glitter did? You must make your own decision. Bill in Royton, here's something to make you think. I'm always grateful for that, Bill. Thank you. Poland has agreed to allow the Americans to station anti-missiles on their land. Anti-missile missiles, as it happens. All right, if both parties have agreed to this, so be it. However, I heard earlier this morning that in return, the Polish government wants guarantees from the Americans to support them in the event of any aggression shown to them by other countries. Consider this, along with Russian threats towards Poland in relation to these missile sites. And to my mind, we have a scenario which reminds me of the situation Britain got herself into in the Second World War, or prior to the Second World War. Yes, Bill. Yes, you're right. Should America be permitted to have weapon sites in Poland? Well, that's for others to decide. But one of the things that is clearly the case is we in the United Kingdom are a Russian target and will remain so for as long as there are American weapons on our soil. Now, whether that means we want to turf those weapons out, again, that's for others. But the reality is that we are a Russian target as a result. How can we not, Bill? B. And Kevin asks a fairly straightforward question. Oh, he also points out that if America do want to build weapons sites in Poland, they'll have to take their own builders, because there's none left in Poland. You can't get a plaster in Poland for love nor money. It's a bit like trying to get your car windscreen done in Romania. They're all over here at the lights. 161 228 2255. But then Kevin asks a more serious point. Why only paedophiles? Why are being told that they should be managed and they're travelling monitored and restricted? Why only them? We have persistent repeat offenders committing all sorts of crimes without much restriction. Recently, in my hometown, a burglar was in court having 93 previous convictions. If we're not going to lock them up to protect the law-abiding, why can't we monitor them all? Of the 30,000 on the sex offenders registers, how many are foreign nationals that we haven't deported, I wonder? That's Kevin's question, and I personally do not know the answer to that. How many of the people on the sex offenders register are foreign nationals? I don't know. And David, I don't know where you are, David, but never mind. Alan, same-sex sex. I know that there is no future in it, but it just shows that these people are more bothered with themselves than what life is all about. I've known a few, and most of them seem okay, but I can't understand it. Well, you don't have to understand it. In the end, David, it's got bugger all to do with you, hasn't it? And where is the responsibility? There is no responsibility on human beings to procreate. There are those that would argue that that is the only purpose we exist. That's why we're here, in order to leave our genes behind and add to the gene pool and all the rest of it. Nonsense. Nonsense. That might be fine for the pigs, the cats, the goats and the dogs, but frankly, that's not what humans are for. We're here to take the best we can from our lives. And if that means having fun with people of the same gender, so what? Providing it's not forced on anybody, I don't have a problem with it. I don't understand why you say you don't understand it. You don't have to. There's nothing to understand. And then David continues about the flasher that was in the news, or was reported about in the news. The flasher, I don't know, why didn't they just point and laugh? It's all just a bit of flesh. Well, you're right. With that, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. The Poles want an undertaking in case of an invasion. Where have I heard that before? Another David, this one in Crumpsall. Where have you heard it before? Quite so. Ted in Moston, of course Russia's democracy is far from perfect. What do you expect after 70 years as a dictatorship? The present time is a historical moment for the Russian people. It's the first time they've governed themselves for centuries. The Russian people have been ruled by people other than themselves. The Romanovs were closely related to the British royal family, and the majority of the communist rulers were not ethnic Russians. Russians' elections are far more open and honest than the British elections, and minor political parties not persecuted. I greatly admire Vladimir Putin. He has built a strong economy and made Russia a major world power once more. I view Russia's lack of altruism as a good thing. While pensioners freeze to death every winter in Britain, the politicians are feeling good about themselves because they give £1 billion every year to the black hole that is Ethiopia. Oh, fair enough. Over the years, sitting here, it may not have escaped your observation, knowledge, that I'm not the biggest fan of dogs. I'm not. Crap at one end, teeth at the other, nothing much in the middle to control them. I'm not a fan of dogs. It's been said, I hate dogs. I don't. But if I did hate dogs, I mean, some dogs are quite nice, to be honest, but if I did hate dogs, I wouldn't hate them by anything like as much as the Kennel Club. I watched the documentary last night. Nothing in it was new to me. The Kennel Club is bad for dogs. I just don't like them.
Ta-da now! £3 billion worth of investment in public transport.
In return, you'll pay a